Awesome. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our newest roundtable. Tonight, we're going to be discussing recruitment best practices and retention. When we talk about retention, we're really tonight, for that purpose, we're really talking about not only retention of your prospective member students that are going through recruitment, but also retaining initiates. So we're really excited. I have two great experts join me tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Christiana Berardi. I'm a chapter consultant. Some of you may know me. For those of you who don't, I managed a couple of the regions on the East Coast and throughout the Midwest. I love talking about recruitment and retention. I'm sure to the point where some of my coworkers are like, okay, that's enough. But it's so fun, and recruitment should be a fun time, so I'm glad to kind of dive into that with you all tonight.
Hey everyone, I'm Robbie Casella. For those chapters I have not worked with this year, I basically kind of cover the entire United States, pretty much from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I don't have much of the middle, which Christiana pretty much has. So it's really I'm honored to be here tonight. I love recruitment as well. I was actually the recruitment advisor during my time as an undergrad, so there's definitely a soft spot in my heart for recruitment, and hopefully we can have an awesome discussion this evening about how to make it, another great semester.
Awesome, and as you can kind of see, my name is Chris McCoy, and I serve the fraternity as the Vice President of Membership Development on the National Council. So I assist with help setting some strategic goals in terms of how we're going to grow the fraternity and what that looks like. In my brotherhood days, the undergrad side, I served my chapter as the initiative advisor. I'm also a recruitment nerd. I enjoy that, meeting new people. So I'm really excited to kind of serve as the host and moderator, and we have our experts. But we're really looking for your participation to make this successful. So if you're joining us on the Google Plus page, you should be able to type in your questions into the question and answer portion, and we'll see those. If you're joining us, watching us on YouTube or any other device, and you want to get a question into us, you can actually tweet to us. So you're going to use hashtag PSP Roundtable and put your question in there, and we'll gladly take that question for you, and we can see what we can do. So it's your chance to kind of ask the experts. So we're going to go and kick off our roundtable tonight and just kind of discuss what is this concept of recruitment. So for both of my experts, I guess my first question to you is, can you describe a little bit of what recruitment actually is? Maybe if someone's never even heard of, like, what exactly is recruitment? And in your opinion, and based on what you've seen, what makes for a very successful recruitment?
Yeah, so recruitment in the most basic form is going out and seeking students that you can see be future members of your chapter to help grow your chapter or sustain your chapter, expand your chapter, and really focus on finding those who you feel like will be able to be the future leaders of your chapter. Seniors, sorry, I know it's bittersweet, but eventually you'll move out and new people will move in, and just finding those people who you feel like could be that good fit for you.
Yeah, I have to concur with Christiana. I think she hit on a nail on the head there. It's all about establishing the legacy. Not just for you personally during your time as an undergraduate, but also like what are you going to leave behind? And I think with recruitment, it's that first step, right, of what you were able to bring to your chapter, but what you're also going to be leaving your chapter in regards to the morale, in regards to kind of just the overall feel of the chapter. It all comes back to recruitment, and what type of members we're bringing in. So yeah.
Definitely, and what I love about recruitment is that it's the lifeblood of the fraternity. And I think one of the things is, if you're watching this roundtable and participating, or you serve your chapter in a recruitment type position, the two things I would take away from it, one is that it's everyone's job for recruitment. I don't really care if you've been in the fraternity for 1 day or 100 days and you're graduating this semester. Like, everyone recruits. It's everyone's responsibility, and constantly to do that. So that way we always have a fraternity there, and you have something to come back on. And I think the second part of why recruitment's so important is because you're passionate. You have a commitment to Phi Sigma Pi. You're showing your commitment by participating in these, and there's people on your campus right now that would love to have the opportunity that you have as a brother. And they just don't know about Phi Sigma Pi yet, or if they know about Phi Sigma Pi, maybe they just don't know what the joining process will be like and if it's a good fit for them. So to me, that's what recruitment's so important. And in terms of successful recruitment, for me, I think it's about planning. If you have a well-planned out recruitment and it's about executing that plan and being flexible. So with that, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to the experts, and maybe you can share, when should chapters start planning recruitment? Where should they even start in the process? And maybe, if you have any best practices that you've seen that you want to share about the planning stages.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. Oh my gosh, there's so many things and so many different components to consider when planning a recruitment. I always think proactive planning is the best bet. You have to think there are also so many other organizations on your campus trying to recruit. So if you want the best rooms, reserve them first. Get those dates and times ready so that you can have your flyers up first. You can have your posters up first. You can have handouts printed. So as for proactive planning, I would say, start at the end of the semester, or even like when you're done with fall recruitment. It's good to, if you keep a potentials to approach spreadsheet of freshmen that you met in the fall that aren't eligible yet, email them before finals. Wish them luck and let them know that you'll be in contact at the beginning of January. So in terms of planning, start as early as you can. It varies on each campuses. I know some of your campuses you cannot get in contact with staff at the university to book these rooms until like the first week of classes or second day of classes. So do what you can with what you're given in terms of planning, and then as you get into when you want to have each thing, think a lot about spacing. If you have an info session one week, on Monday and Tuesday, you're going to want to have something at the end of that week, because if your events don't start, that's too long of a period of time in which you're not engaging the students and you're not following up on that information. And oh my gosh, I can go on and on and on and on. But Robbie, do you have anything else to contribute about just planning, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about success?
Yeah, so I know in my home chapter we always had the phrase recruitment never ends, and I think that's one thing to always keep in the back of your mind, that like, yes, your formal recruitment, like your info sessions to bid voting might be over, but we're always should be looking and identifying ways to kind of get our name out on campus, and I think transitions is a really good time to kind of, figure out like, okay, how do we plan a recruitment? Especially if this is your first-time recruitment chair or advisor, having that opportunity to shadow and see, what went well, in the fall or in the spring, and what can we bring into future semesters, or maybe what didn't work so well for us, and are there ways to tinker with, how our recruitment is planned. I think is really important, and it's an ongoing, constant process of evaluating what do we like, what is working, and where are we finding kind of some snafus in our process. And I think the more that we can identify and take some a considerable amount of time to jot those thoughts down or share them with one another, talk about it as a chapter, that's where it's going to start, those ideas. And then from those ideas, the sooner you can plan, the better. And like Christiana had said, the earlier that you can get those rooms reserved, and the sooner you have an idea of what you're going to be doing each week, the easier it's going to be, just to kind of get those room reservations in, but you never want to be working from behind, right? We want to avoid that stress. You guys have enough stress in your life already, and I think the more that we can, be proactive and be on our game, and give that positive representation of what Phi Sigma Pi can be, it's really going to do wonders in kind of showing, this is what we stand for, in having a well-run recruitment program.
And as Chris mentioned before too, like we said, recruitment is a team effort. So you have to figure the earlier we have these dates planned, the more time our members are going to have to adjust their work schedule or figure out how recruitment is going to fit into their current class schedule. So we have to think, while we so maybe I'm the recruitment advisor and I'm planning all this out and this works for me, how does that compare to the rest of your chapter? So sending, doodle polls, figuring out what are the best nights, best times to where we can maximize our attendance. I'm sure you've had, the experience where you have an info session where you have 15, 20, 25 members, and then the next info session you have 4, and you're rapid fire texting or Facebook, you're like, where is everybody? Get to the info session. And unbeknownst to you, there's a huge time commitment on that night for a lot of other members. Maybe they're in social organizations or service organizations or just in other things where they couldn't make it out that night. It's good to know all those things ahead of time so that you can factor it into your planning so that you're not caught in a situation where you have 50 P&Ms and you're like, oh my gosh, what do we do with all these potential new members? And so, yeah, it really just comes down to planning and transitions, and reach out to your chapter consultant. If you're going through a transition and you've never planned a recruitment before and you're kind of unsure and you want some tips, we work with a lot of other chapters. So just this year I found out that it's really popular at a lot of schools to do recruitment buddies or rush buddies or recruitment ambassador programs where members are actually matched with potential new members either at the info session or at events, to where that person can then personally invite the potential new member to the next event, which adds a nice touch. If you're sending mass emails, that's great. It's going to, do the purpose in getting them the event information they need and getting the updates to keep them on track with recruitment. But it's always nice to get a text saying, it was so great to meet you at blah, blah, blah tonight. Can't wait to see you at this, or are you coming to this recruitment event, or want to grab coffee? And that'll give you that personal touch. Because like we've talked about before, people join people. While our organization is great and there's a lot of things that's going to attract them, if we're not engaging them, there's going to be an aspect missing. And so it's really important to do what you can to engage the potential new members that come out and kind of avoid just using it as a social event maybe with some of the other members.
Yeah, I think Christiana hit the nail on the head again, as always. With reaching out to your consultant, if you haven't realized by now, we are extremely invested, not just in your chapter's success, but making sure you guys have a solid recruitment. So I know a few weeks ago I had an initiate advisor who was brand new in his position reach out to me, and he was basically like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm like, all right, well, let's have a conversation and let's figure out what we're doing. That is what we're here for. We're here to help you, walk you through those processes, especially if you are new and you don't necessarily fully know how to, plan ahead or where to reach out on campus to get some things, whether it's a room reservation or, email access, which I'm sure is going to come up a little later in this roundtable. That's what we're here for. We're here to be a sounding board, bounce some ideas, and guide you on that way. So I definitely encourage, reaching out to your consultant if you ever feel stuck or, don't really know where to start.
Awesome. And, I think just to echo about planning early is so important. And also I think it's important to have kind of a plan B into place, especially especially our northern schools, spring recruitment. If you know that winter weather is going to strike in February, late January, then you planning maybe an outdoor event, not such a great idea. Or just saying no, this is our planned main recruitment week of events, but have a backup. With planning, the other tip advice I would give you is just knowing that recruitment is not just the week that's on your flyer of when your info sessions are or whenever you're having a Meet the Brothers event. There's a term a lot used in Greek letter organizations in this world called 365 recruitment, and that basically means we recruit year-round. And that's why we call it recruitment. Just a very quick history lesson. So the term rush actually came around when fraternities were really starting to boom in the early 1900s, because a lot of the schools at that time were close to the train tracks, and students would literally get off the train and rush to the fraternity house that they wanted to join. So those students were intentionally already picking what organization they wanted to join, and they would rush to them. If your chapter was maybe like mine when I was an undergrad, or like a lot of other chapters, not a whole lot of people are rushing to knock down our door, especially when it comes to recruitment. Some of us have that, and it's a great problem to have. But for the most part, we have to recruit. And so we have to actively go out and seek those members that we want that can add benefit to our organization. So that's so important that it's year-round. Maybe it's a time where you can't give someone a bid, but you can still let them know, invite them to events if it's open to non-members, and include them. So that's so important to have within that process. I know a big thing both of our experts hit on was about asking for help, and they mentioned, our national staff, especially our consultants, are a great resource to ask. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So feel free. We get a lot of questions about, like, what do my national dues that I pay to the fraternity cover, right? Part of that is the national staff and the resources that you have. So you are paying for this. So going along with that, I would ask our experts, besides just our great chapter consultants that we have, what are some other resources that that chapters could use?
I will jump in on this. So I think the first place I would direct you to is the Resource Center online, as well as your chapter admin portal. There are some really fantastic resources on there, some of them which are brand new, which were developed over during the fall semester, that are really kind of focused on helping you guys with the little things. There's like an info session template on there. There's a quick guide on different ways to PR on campus and get your name out, and we kind of list like all the different ways that you can kind of get your name out. So I would start with the Resource Center and just see like what ideas come from there that maybe the chapter currently doesn't do on campus, or something that just sparks your imagination. So I definitely think the Resource Center is a really, really valuable commodity for all our undergrads.
Robbie, you make a lot of great points, and this is actually a great segue. We have a question from Twitter about resources from Julianne from Ada chapter, and she asks, are there any planning timeline templates to use for planning recruitment? So Julianne, you are in luck. There's a recruitment planning guide on there. You'll also find a lot of great tips in the curriculum guide, and that covers the entire span from the planning process, PR, recruitment, to all the way through weekly agendas for the initiation program. So if you're a new initiate advisor, those are also going to be key for you. Like Robbie said, we have an information session PowerPoint template with a matching handout and how-to guide. There's also new PowerPoints for each week of the initiation program, which are amazing, courtesy of our Director of Leadership Advancement, Danielle, and she's been working really hard on those. And then I really, truly feel like the Resource Center is just so underutilized. There's so many awesome things, and I'll have chapters, reach out to me, and I'll send them things from the Resource Center. But I feel like actually going to the Resource Center and looking for yourself and seeing what other things there are going to be helpful. Of course, we're going to send you everything that you ask for, but also there may be things that you haven't thought of or haven't thought to ask about. So I would definitely go in and, check that out. There are, so many things. Like if you're wondering how to incorporate Hobie into your information session PowerPoint and don't know enough about that, go for it. So yeah, just check out the Resource Center. Lots of great things in there. You really will find it worth the trip to the Resource Center.
Yeah, the new recruitment planning guide, I think, is going to be a really great tool that is on there for our chapters. It literally breaks down for you guys week by week how to plan a successful recruitment. It goes from identifying how to get data access all the way to like the conversations you should be having as a chapter in preparation for recruitment, to making sure you're reserving your rooms on time, and then even like what comes after recruitment, right? Kind of that evaluation stage, right, where you're seeing what works and what doesn't. So it's a lengthy document. There's some really cool resources at the end of it that kind of help you figure out your chapter size and just evaluate how your chapter overall kind of operates within recruitment and what could be tweaked a little bit. So it's brand new, so I definitely encourage our chapters to take a look at it and get familiar with kind of, from the national perspective, what a typical sound recruitment will look like.
And in addition to the Resource Center, definitely follow the national blog on WordPress. There have been a lot of awesome things going on there. So if you maybe haven't checked out the Resource Center, there have been posts about some of these new resources. It's a great way to know that they have been uploaded if you're not checking the Resource Center always. And then also on Chapter Talk, we've been having a recruitment tip series. So every couple of days there's a new tip on there, from PR to bids and, just, talking about success. We've, found out that hand-delivered bids are highly successful in a lot of chapters in retaining initiates from the start of recruitment to pinning and throughout initiation. So you check out, definitely check out the Facebook Chapter Talk page, the blog, and the Resource Center is going to be recruitment gold.
Great. And so my advice I would give you as a chapter is, one, go to our national website and look at the Resource Center first. All those resources available to you are, one, they're branded Phi Sigma Pi, so it's great. You have an info session and you're like, I'm not creative, I don't have that PowerPoint. Like we mentioned, we have a PowerPoint already made for you, so you can put some info in there. So that's the great first place to start for Phi Sigma Pi branded related events and information that you need. The other piece of advice I'd give you is outside of Phi Sigma Pi, there's a lot of resources available to you, especially on your campus. So going to your Office of Student Life or Fraternity Life on your campus, go visit with them. Say, like, can I have 30 minutes of your time to meet with you and say, I'm the recruitment chair of the National Honor Fraternity here on campus, and we're looking for potential new members. What advice do you have for me? They might be able to tell you about space on campus. They may be able to give you referrals. So that's great. Other places you can reach out to is reach out to your campus honor college if they have an honors program. That may be a place to start. Or think about, what does your chapter do? Do you do a lot of local service? So maybe if you do a lot of local services for maybe people with disabilities, and that's something your chapter volunteers with, look on your campus. Are there clubs that serve people with disabilities? Is there like a Best Buddies chapter on your campus? And you can go meet with them and partner with them. If you have a professional fraternity council on your campus, that's a great place. The other thing I'd say is feel free to secret shop other chapters in Phi Sigma Pi. Look at their website, see what they're doing, reach out to them, and kind of secret shop other organizations and get ideas. So don't be afraid to ask. Take advantage of it. One question we did have about the Resource Center is that some of the documents may require a password. So if our experts, do you want to give any tips if people have issues with a password needed document, what should they do?
So most of our documents, the password got me on passport now. The password is our fraternal word in all lowercase. If you have any questions outside of that, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can help you get access to those documents. But yeah, you just insert the fraternal word all lowercase, and it should unlock all those documents for you.
And then one of our questions that also came in our question answer portion, kind of related about engaging members through the recruitment process. So I think that's probably a great transition point for us since we've kind of talked about planning. So let's talk about a little bit during recruitment and engaging our prospective new members, or you might hear us call them PNMs for prospective new members. So I think a lot of times during recruitment we will see a very vast variety of different personality types and backgrounds of folks. And some people can be very introverted, and so recruitment can be a little bit stressful for them trying to meet other people. Other people can be very extroverted and kind of going forth. So what advice for the experts that you guys have for our chapters of how do you find that balance of, maybe someone's not overly bubbly and coming out, how do we make them feel comfortable and get to know them, and really kind of teaching the chapter that is about finding the balance and having a great diverse initiate class.
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and it's a super loaded question as well, because there's so many different angles you can come at it. I think my biggest piece of advice when it comes to just, I think, for our chapter members engaging with prospective new members is, don't be afraid, right? I think a lot of times as a, brother, maybe you are a little bit more introverted, and that's totally okay. We need introverts in this world to succeed. If everybody was an extrovert, it probably would be a crazy place. So I think, when we're looking at recruitment, there's going to be some, nerves in this process, especially for potential new members. And I think the more that, we can come at it from, welcoming them and encouraging them and just, acting like a regular college student is the only way to have a successful recruitment, right? We want to level with them. They're your peers, right? Whether you have classes with them or you're talking about a TV show or, there might be some awesome event coming up on campus. We always want to start those conversations from, just being students and being friends and knowing what's going on, at your college or university. And I think I always try to make sure that brothers are always the first ones to make those interactions, because you kind of have the upper hand in this, right? You're in the chapter, you understand your chapter, and the people that are coming out to the info sessions and the recruitment events, right? They're trying to get in, right? They're trying to make those impressions, and I think the more that we can go out there and make them feel comfortable and make them feel welcome. Is step one in engaging our members, right? Is not being afraid and taking that initiative, whether you are that extrovert or whether you are, an introvert. And there's a lot of different ways that we can go about that. But my big, takeaway is just jump in, right? And see where that goes. I'm sure Christiana has a ton of other thoughts on this as well that will.
I have so many thoughts. So I always have so many thoughts about recruitment, nonstop. If you want to talk about recruitment, I'm down. We can talk anytime. But yeah, my answer is kind of threefold, if you will. You're already loaded with your biggest asset. So know your own members. Know your fellow brothers. Know them. Because even if you're an introvert or you're just kind of overwhelmed by the social situation of a ton of strangers in a room, if you know your members, you can be a facilitator between that potential new member and a member that they're going to get along with really well. So you don't even have to hold a conversation for a long period of time. Have 3 questions that you're going to ask every single person. And on those 3 questions, be like, you know what? You should really meet my brother Sally. Or you should really meet my brother Rob. You guys would just hit it off so well. So-and-so loves Harry Potter. Or so-and-so plays tennis. So have each, if you have a recruitment workshop with your chapter, have everybody write down, quick facts about each other and just get to know each other before recruitment a little better too. This will especially make new members who maybe were just inducted the previous semester feel a lot more comfortable going into recruitment, knowing that okay, I barely know these people and now I have to find, new members to bring in. A recruitment workshop is a great way to get everybody on the same page. And so, that's kind of, the first part of it. The second part is make sure you're getting to know them. So a lot of chapters will have a recruitment application or a questionnaire or a member profile that they want the potential new members to fill out. Have them fill that out, because then what is even in that moment, if we couldn't match them with somebody, we're going to take that profile or we're going to take that application and we're going to say, oh my gosh, at the next event, we're going to match them with this person. And they'll, share contact information, and boom, now you have recruitment buddies. Now you have them, and you have that personal connection, that one-on-one connection to where we can say, come out to the next event via text or Facebook or wherever, and you're building those personal connections. So if you're an introvert, use that to your advantage. Know your members and kind of direct them to other people. And then if you're an introvert and you see somebody kind of standing over by the side or not really interacting, that's a perfect icebreaker. Go over there and be like, oh my gosh, I know, right? It's so overwhelming. When I came out, I felt the same exact way. And so you can kind of make bonds and make connections with those people who may not feel as, outgoing as some of the other potentials who are at recruitment.
Yeah, one Alpha Eta chapter at the University of Delaware has a really great system of pairing up like a more tenured brother in the chapter who's been through recruitment quite a while with a brand new brother who, this is their first or, their second recruitment, and they pair them up to get them, going through the process. And I think that really works in establishing that comfort level, kind of showing, what those interactions generally, look like. And I think it just helps calm nerves, especially if you aren't a type of person who, feels totally comfortable in situations, where you got to talk to people. So shout out to Alpha Eta because they definitely do a really good job of setting up a system that really helps, make sure that you're not kind of just out there on your own, especially as a brother.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, especially with recruitment, it's about knowing what you're looking for, and knowing what you're trying to get and achieve in the long run. And so I think a big thing is if you guys are not having discussions before recruitment about what are we looking for in a new member, what are those qualities, then you should. That's definitely a conversation you want to have as a chapter before you get into recruitment. But what are things as a chapter we value? What are things as a national organization that we're looking for? I think a great way to do that is kind of think about our own ritual. Think about what do we stand for as an organization? What do we really value? And I think one thing when you look at that, you'll notice our values as an organization are not necessarily personality-based, right? Like an introvert can live our values just as strongly as an extroverted person. And so when you really break it down to that way, it makes it really consistent. Like, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for someone who upholds the ideals that we do as a member of Phi Sigma Pi. And it may not look like how we do it, but it's still there. Another big thing I would advise you about, and this is something for me as an undergrad I didn't really fully understand until I got older, but with recruitment, I think a lot of times we're really looking for, who's going to be that best brother, who's going to be such a great brother, and we all have that one brother or maybe our group of brothers in the chapter that we're really close to, kind of like our brother bestie. And sometimes it's hard in recruitment that if you don't see yourself maybe being a bestie with a person that's going through recruitment as a prospective new member, that's okay. Because as we know in the chapters, sometimes brothers fight, sometimes brothers don't always get along, and you're not going to be besties with every single person, and that's okay. But just because you're not going to be super uber close with that person in the chapter doesn't mean another brother will. And if we don't give people a chance, we are actually robbing our own brothers of having a great brotherhood experience of someone potentially new that can make our chapter and our national organization great. So it's just really about having those conversations prior and setting expectations and being comfortable of extending an offer or a bid to those that we feel that their values align with ours. So with that, we kind of talked about talking to people. So let's say we plan a great recruitment, we start early, we ask for help, we're setting expectations of who we want. Recruitment week of our events are going. What kind of advice can you give to chapters of how do we retain people? So, it's very easy. Maybe we have 60 people that show up to our info night on Monday, and now it's Wednesday, and we have like 5 that have been coming. So how do we keep that original group of people excited about joining Phi Sigma Pi throughout the process?
Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, sorry guys, I got kicked off. I'm on site at Epsilon Phi, and the hotel Wi-Fi decided it didn't want me to live broadcast anymore. So yeah, I really feel like it comes back to engaging them and having personal connections. If you want them to come back out, make them feel welcome and make them feel like they're individually important. And so I think if you're trying to carry that over from the info sessions, usually what I say is let's say if you get 60 that come out to info sessions, it's typical that may cut down to 30 that come to events that you'll end up, voting on. I would say typically it does split in half a little bit, because the info session is really them kind of figuring out what you are, figuring out what the organization is, and deciding. We would love to see this higher. Some chapters do see this really a lot higher. Some of these chapters have programs like we talked about, like Recruitment Buddies. The Gamma Rho chapter has what they call Recruitment Ambassadors that have a section of the potential new members. So like, let's say like A through L or various sections of the alphabet, where at the end of each event, the potential new members will meet with their recruitment ambassador, ask any questions that they have, get matched with other people, just provide feedback, and they kind of decompress after the event and talk with their recruitment advisor. So no matter what, whether they are matched with somebody or not, they always have one contact outside of the recruitment advisor or any of the other emails being advertised for them to get back in touch. So that's kind of at the beginning phases. You're going to want to make those personal connections, make them feel individually important to get them to carry on into your events. Once you get to the events, that's the fun part. Like, of course they're going to love playing games with you, or playing trivia, or bowling, or doing whatever you like to do during recruitment. I know a lot of chapters also, have the tripod influence in the recruitment events, which I think helps a lot. And then when you get towards, the initiation side of things, you're going to want to consider having a pre-pinning meeting. It's very intimidating to get a bid that says, "Congratulations, you're offered a bid. Show up at 6 p.m. on Sunday wearing all black." And you're like, "What? Okay, business casual. Okay, so that's good. So let me go buy some, what are we going to be doing?" That can be really scary for some people. I know that I would kind of be like, "No, I'm a planner. I need to know exactly what's going on, what I'm getting into." So consider a pre-pinning meeting. Consider, getting the bids, getting everyone together, celebrating with them, congratulating them, and then letting them know what the next couple weeks will look like. That is going to make a huge impression. It's going to make your chapter look really organized, and it's also going to provide some sense of comfort and support to the initiates or the future initiates, which I think is incredibly important when it comes to retention.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I think at the end of the day, your recruitment is only going to be as successful as the time and energy that your chapter puts into it, right? So I think especially for chapters that maybe don't initially have some sort of application or survey, at an info session at recruitment events, you want to make sure we're getting information to follow up with these PNMs, whether that's an email, a phone number. We want to keep that conversation going, right? We want them to feel welcome, because if they don't feel welcomed, if we don't feel like we're connecting, or they don't feel like they're connecting with the chapter, there's going to be very little incentive for them to want to come back after info sessions or come back for other recruitment events. So definitely making sure that you have some sort of mechanism in place to kind of get that information, and delegate that out to your chapter, right? This should not just be the recruitment advisor solely responsible for running the entire recruitment program, because it's impossible, especially for some chapters that get a lot of people to come out for recruitment, to make those connections with every single person. So I think the more that you can kind of identify brother interests and talents and align that with potential new members, and connect them via a phone number or an email, and making sure that we're thanking them, for coming out, especially after, that info session, saying, "Hey, we really loved, having you come to our info session. Here are our recruitment events that are coming up next week. We would love to see you, come to these and continue the process." So yeah, I would say that's kind of my big thing on that engagement, right? It all comes down to those relationships, and it all comes down to the feeling that a potential new member is going to have when they leave that event. Right? Is it a feeling of like, "Oh my gosh, that was an awesome experience, I can't wait to come back"? Or was it, "I really don't feel like I got to know anybody, nobody got to know me, where's my incentive in wanting to learn more about the chapter?" And that really comes back to how much time and enthusiasm as a chapter we're putting into our recruitment programs.
And to Rapi's point too, that also includes one of my biggest tips about info sessions. Don't end on a Q&A. It's so awkward. It's so awkward, and I'm sure this has happened to you where you're like, "Any questions?" How long should we wait before we think they might have questions? And nobody's asking you questions. If you notice in the information session template, and one of the biggest reasons this is if they're at the info session, that's the first time they're meeting you. If they're having questions about the initiation program, likely it's about time management or finances, or if they can be in other organizations, or things that they just might not want to publicize in front of a room full of strangers. So our info session PowerPoint template has the Q&A a little bit ahead of the end, in which you can hand out index cards at the beginning when they sign in at your welcome table. Then you can tell them, hey, like, if you have any questions, just jot them down during the presentation. Collect all those index cards. Even if they're all blank, you can have the 3 most popular questions that are always asked, and you can ask them. And that'll make a good impression. It'll answer their questions if, like we said, there may be introverted members who or students who may not feel comfortable to ask a question. And then, you know, when you end, have your recruitment schedule out, and then do an icebreaker game, or have a meet and greet style event with snacks and water, or you know, other beverages, and have, like, you know, people talking to each other, or tossing a beach ball around with questions, and just, you know, just little things that can get to know people at the basic level. You don't have to jump in and be like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You'd be a great fit for Phi Sigma Phi. You know, those are, you know, pretty loaded. Little things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite season? Or which band do you like? Or these little things are, you know, are going to jog your memory either for something that you like or something another member likes. And like Robbie said, if they leave that information session, if you don't follow up on the information and you give the presentation, you're like, okay, that's it. Come tomorrow for game night. They're going to walk out, have the information, and you will not have followed up on that. And it's going to feel really empty. It's going to feel like, okay, well, I probably could have visited their website. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. They're there for you. Ultimately, we're a brotherhood, so give them that feeling. It's all about the experience. And so that's one thing that I would, you know, really drive home is, like, engage them, because it'll make all the difference.
And I would just offer that, you know, I think 2 big keys to it is authenticity and transparency through the joining process. I think we all know we've had incidents, maybe, you know, someone comes to recruitment events and maybe they're not being their authentic self because they want to say things they think we want to hear, or, you know, maybe to try to act more impressive. But we just want to be authentic in both ways. So, you know, if you're one of those chapters that have very strict requirements, then you need to be upfront and transparent about that. Like, we're a chapter, and these are what we expect. You know, by no means do you need to air, like, all your chapter's dirty laundry out there at the info session, but you need to be upfront with members so they know what they're joining and if they're a good fit. Because at the end of the day, we're really looking about fit. It's not necessarily a numbers game. It's just fit and the quality that's there. So being authentic throughout that will keeping those relationships there. Just a helpful hint, I know, like, sending text and have that personal touch is great. If you're from, like, a smaller chapter, or you're just, like, really short, we'll have a brothers to help out. There's a free website called Remind 101. It's free to use, and basically you come up with a phone number, it generates it for you, people can text that phone number and automatically enroll, and you can send out texts from there for free. You don't get the potential's new phone number, so it's kind of a safety net for them. But then you can just send out mass texts throughout the week by keeping them informed of, like, you know, hey, thanks for coming to the info session. We're playing dodgeball tomorrow night, or, you know, and you can send a reminder, hey, don't forget we have this event in an hour. Hope to see you all there. So that's just a way, if maybe if you don't have all the resources, that maybe 3 or 4 committed brothers are trying to make it happen, you can do it. So it doesn't matter whether you have 30 people helping or 3. You can definitely do it. So with that, I think one thing I've been seeing over the last couple of years in Phi Sigma Pi, I think it's a trend I'm starting to see, is some chapters are imposing recruitment quotas on them, or they're capping the number of people they may take in during recruitment. And I'm hearing a lot sometimes from brothers of saying, we're too scared to grow too big too fast, or we're intimidated about taking a large class. So it's kind of asking, I want to ask the experts on our panel, you know, what's your kind of response to that kind of mentality in our chapters, that we're too afraid to grow fast, and, you know, what can we do to handle that?
That is an awesome question, Chris, and I think it's one of, like, the #1 question a lot of our chapters ask us. I think from, you know, my personal experience, both as an undergrad and now being a second-year consultant, I think I would, you know, have chapters ask themselves, like, why are you afraid to grow, right? Like, what has anything, like, what bad is going to come from it, right? Like, has it happened before where we grew and bad things happened? Because if not, well, like, why not, right? Why not have more manpower? Why not have a stronger chapter? Why not have more opportunities for awesome events? So I think a lot of times we handicap ourselves in the unknowns, because they're, unknowns, and just we're, creatures of habit, and we try to resist change as much as possible. And when it comes to your chapter size, there's a lot of chapters that are just very resistant to it. And I think just kind of figuring out, well, like, why are we resistant to it, right? Like, what have we seen that would lead us to be resistant, is kind of like figuring out, well, like, what are we afraid of, right? Are we afraid that we're going to lose our, community? Well, how do you know you're going to lose the community, right? You never know what's going to come from having, especially if you're taking really, standout, stellar potential new members. That community might become even stronger, right? So I think we never want to handicap ourselves in those unknowns, and potentially, damage the chapter, or set the chapter back in its growth and its development, by not taking, those members who we identify as strong members just because, they're number 21 on the list and we only want to take 20.
Yeah, and to Robbie's point, if you're feeling like you might lose that strong, close-knit bond that you have in your small chapter, I know chapters that are over 100 that have like outrageous energy, like just, I mean, they're up there, and fellowship is off the charts. I also know a lot of chapters in the mid-size range that struggle with chapter morale. So it isn't dependent on your size, and that's one thing I would say. Another question to ask yourselves is, if there's another organization on your campus that you're like, wow, if we could be like them, it would be great. So what is it about them? Do they raise more money for community service? Do they do more active community service? Do they plan campus-wide events that you like to attend? You can do all that with more members, and you can certainly do it with the members that you have now. It's going to be a lot of time commitment, and as we know, college students are very busy, so it would be a lot easier to kind of divide and spread those responsibilities. For smaller chapters, you know exactly what I mean. Some of you have 2 or 3 positions, and you would love to have a couple more people to just say, you can be the treasurer, or you can be this or that, and this way I can only worry about recruitment. So I would definitely keep that in mind. The other thing about what I like to refer to as capping is it's going to adversely affect the votes at your voting session. So one thing that I've seen firsthand is when you set a specific number, you have a PowerPoint full of, let's say, 40 people, and your number's 20. As you're going through those, and members are going, okay, I definitely want this person, that person, as they get closer to what your number is, they're going to stop considering other people at the end of the PowerPoint. And these members may be equally as good or even better than some of the people at the beginning. And what that's going to do is it's going to count people out that shouldn't be counted out, and also make it really difficult when some people do get to 20 in their mind or on paper, and you're going to see votes start to drop off. And so that's one thing that I would just be aware of. Having a range, there's nothing wrong with having a range, but setting a number is going to do one of 2 things. Let's say you have 20 and you only had 12 people come out to recruitment. Okay, well, how are you going to get to that 20 now? Because you voted on 20. Another thing is, let's say you have enough people, and that 21st member got 75% of the votes or 80% of the votes. How are we not going to take that 21st member? Or let's say you had enough people, but only 18 people had the majority of the votes, and that 19th and 20th person had less than 30% of the votes. Are we going to take them just because that's your number for this semester? So there's a couple things to consider. It works both ways. I often think that it's it inhibits the chapter more than it helps the chapter. So if you're used to capping and you're trying to get out of that trend, talk to your chapter consultants. There have been a couple chapters that I know of who used to cap, who have stopped, who have felt it to be a huge relief because they actually end up being around the number that they feel comfortable with, but without the stress of having to define that, get to that, and so I would think about that. And if you're trying to take a larger class, or recently you had 120 people come out or 80 people come out, Congratulations, that's huge. Like, that is awesome. It's a great problem to have. If you're looking at taking a larger class, have a committee, recruitment or initiation committee, and each of those committee members can be in charge of 5 people in that new class. So you can have your initiate advisor and your historian or whoever teaches your classes, and then each person on the committee can be in charge of being that other contact outside the IA, outside of their big that they can go to. They can help grade those quizzes, and you can break it down from a class of 30 to however many people on your committee, and it easily is going to be more manageable for your chapter when you spread those responsibilities, similar to the team aspects in recruitment.
Yeah, I think my last point on, just talking about size of your recruitment class and capping, having a large recruitment class isn't going to make your chapter weaker, right? Your chapter is going to be weaker or struggle because of the overall experience, right? Because of the chapter morale, and that's a whole different topic for a different day. And we actually did a roundtable on chapter morale, which you can definitely check out. But I don't want chapters to feel like, well, we can't take a larger class because it's going to ruin the dynamic, right? The dynamic's already going to be there, right, in the environment that you create as a chapter. If you're bringing more people into a positive, awesome environment, you're not going to have a problem. I can promise you that. But if you're bringing people into an environment where you are hesitant, or you're not as close as you want to be, or you're struggling with a lot of apathy, that's where those problems are coming from, right? You're not going to get problems from having more qualified students, right? You're going to have more problems in how you interact with one another and how you manage one another and manage your expectations of one another.
And if your chapter is nervous about possibly not being able to have the capacity to handle that many people, please reach out to the national staff, because that's something we can help you. From my personal point of view, what I would share is when I hear chapters say we're scared to grow because of XYZ, to me it just says there's another issue in the chapter that we need to work on, and that's an internal chapter issue. It's not the responsibility of the PMM, so they shouldn't be penalized for that. So sometimes if you're like, we're afraid to grow, maybe it's the initiate program that we need to look at. Do we need a stronger initiate program at your chapter, or do we need to help with a morale issue that's already there? So we'll help you. We'll get you the resources. I mean, I think about when Phi Sigma Phi was founded, we had 3 faculty members. They didn't have a website. They didn't have a national staff. They didn't have anything. They didn't set a cap. So we were founded from the beginning of taking people who are worthy, and I think that's something we stand for and we can continue. So don't be scared to grow. I always think about, too, is if you cap your recruitment class, what if you have a down semester next semester? What if a lot of people transfer or leave? Now you're going to start below. I always worry, like, how many future national presidents of Phi Sigma Phi are we missing out on because maybe we passed on a bid when we could? On the other side of that, I always do encourage chapters to be strict with bids, and it doesn't mean that you have to give a bid to everyone. So make sure that we are selecting people that are the best fit for that. So I know we had a couple of questions that came over Twitter. We are going to do our best to still end on time by 9:30. So we'll turn to our experts if they want to pick maybe one of the Twitter questions that came on. And then if we don't get to your question tonight, just keep the conversation going. You can use hashtag PSP Roundtable, and I'm sure all of us that will be on Twitter will gladly respond and give suggestions.
Awesome. So we had a question come in. If we are having problems keeping brothers after induction, how do you recommend helping retention after initiation?
So then again, it all is going to come back to those personal relationships, right? What are we doing during the initiation program to make our initiates feel welcome, to make them feel supported, right? Do we have a strong big little program, right, where we're able to mutually pair bigs and littles together, right? What are the expectations of that relationship? Are we having bonding events? Are we taking time to meet with initiates and give them positive constructive feedback? Are we taking a time as a whole chapter, right, to get to know the initiates, and not just kind of saying, okay, well, Jim and Dale are a big little, like, they just need to do all the bonding, right? And they're going to be separate from everybody else, right? Are we kind of encouraging bonds between every member, so that we're allowing for those opportunities to kind of organically blossom, where members really do have mutual connections, whether that's their future interests, outside of college, or a television show, or a sport. Are we fostering that environment, or are we kind of just pigeonholing people into, like, nope, you two have to hang out together for the rest of forever until you graduate, so have fun, right? We definitely want to make sure we're being open and respectful, and encouraging of one another, throughout our entire time in Phi Sigma Pi, but definitely during the initiation program.
This one is a pretty simple one for me. Avoid false advertising. And I know that might sound weird, but during recruitment, we're like pushing it down their throats. We're like, join us. We're so excited to have you. We want you. You want us. Yay. Oh my gosh, we're so excited. Play games with us. Do all these fun things. And then we pin them and don't put them in the initiation program, then say, okay, see you at induction. No. That's not how it works. They're going to think they're joining this like awesome brotherhood, and they're going to hang out with you guys all the time, and then they get one person or two people maybe, and then a big brother. And so that's one thing is, like Robbie said, like, get all of the members involved. Some of the most successful initiation programs that consistently have 100% retention, the members have some sort of responsibility to the initiation program. Whether that's they have to go to a certain amount of meetings, or on their end they have to interview all the initiates, or any other requirements where the members have to be involved. That is essential. Whether you have, like, I know Beta Sigma chapter has on Thursday nights, they do initiate events. So every Thursday, members know Thursday night events are mandatory, and they all get together. And so that has been really successful. One of my favorite things to help the initiate class get to know the members better is to do like a speed dating round after pinning. So just with the new members, get all the members together and just do a speed dating round. I think it's so fun. It's fun to get to know them outside of maybe the other potentials, or if you're having a large recruitment and you took maybe 20 out of 40 or 60, just focusing on them and getting to know them. And so you can do that through speed dating. I know Gamma Psi uses a lookbook where potential bigs submit almost like a profile of them, and the littles do the same, so that every single member in the fraternity, whether they're trying to be a big or not, has access, so they can flip through the initiates profiles and say, oh my gosh, they play tennis or they Irish dance, like I used to do that. That's so cool. I'm going to call them and see if I can meet up with them for coffee. So really make the initiation program just as welcoming as an environment as if you were still trying to sell them on the experience of Phi Sigma Pi, because we love recruitment so much and we're so excited when we get them, but don't forget about that. And then that goes over into retention into the next semester, as this Twitter question mentioned. If you are worried about the spring semester, they're inducted and then they have 3 months off by themselves, plan a retreat or check in with them over the summer, or do a social media post where you say, here's what our brothers are doing over the summer. Find some way to interact with them and really keep them involved over that period of time.
Yeah, it's so important to make sure that there's alignment between what was promised during the recruitment process and the initiate period and what is delivered, both as an initiated member throughout. So, when the honeymoon phase is over, the next semester after inductions, what we promised people during recruitment needs to be there. And likewise, what we use to recruit people, if we're not doing values-based recruitment and we're promising people a party or we're promising things that don't really align with what we value, you can't be mad when that's all they want after they join, because that's what we sold them on. So we just need to make sure we're constantly having that alignment of what we're promising that goes along with our values and what's being delivered. And that goes both ways, from the chapter to the members, but also on the flip side, to make sure that as initiates, as they're going through the initiate process and the recruitment process, that they align with what we're looking for as well. a big resource that you have is all the initiate program resources on the national website. The mid-semester vote is a great time because that way you can have that check-in. If you need help with mid-semester vote, there's a blog post. We did a roundtable last fall about mid-semester voting that's available to you. So there's a lot of great resources out there. So I know we didn't get to everyone's Twitter question, so we'll make sure we respond to those on Twitter. We do like to try to keep these roundtables to about the hour range. So definitely keep them come in if there's any conversation that you want to have. And then I'll go ahead and turn it into the experts if you have a last wrap-up tips or comments that you want to give, and then I'll do a few announcements and we'll sign off for the night.
Christiana, you want to kick it off?
Oh, yeah, I will jump right in. So major tip is just get personal. That's what recruitment's all about. You want to know them as, people, if they're going to be a good fit for your chapter, if you're a good fit for them. I know we didn't get to this, but I had a quick tabling 101, tips and tricks, because I was at a student organization fair, and I got inspired today. Learn their name. Don't start with, have you heard about? Hi, my name's so-and-so. What is your name? For some reason, once you learn their name, they don't walk away. I don't know if it's because now you know who they are and they're kind of obligated. But yeah, make it quick, learn their name, and have a takeaway. And so just get personal. Start with basic human interactions and you will be good.
Yeah, my big tip for recruitment, I think it's just, be authentic, right? Be yourself. And create an experience that you would want to go through, right? I think that comes back to the false promises, right, and false advertising. Like, let's not sell something that we can't then provide, right? Or not let's say we're one thing, but then we're really another, right? Or let's not say that, it's really easy, the initiation program, and then you make them plan like 15 events. Right? I think we need to be just really honest and authentic with what our expectations are and have fun with the program, right? This is college. These are the 4 years where you get to learn and grow and figure out, hopefully a little clear picture of who you are and who you want to be. And Phi Sigma Pi can be a really, really valuable part of your growing experience just as a person. And recruitment is a huge part in that, right? Connecting and networking and, finding ways to relate to people that you've never met before. So just be yourself and jump right in.
Yeah, and I would share, I think the big thing to take away is, I think in all things in Phi Sigma Pi, is that you can relate this to your professional life after graduation and you move on. And recruitment is the biggest one for me. You're going to learn, how do you manage a budget? How do you set up a budget? How do you do event planning? How do you delegate people? How do you get interviewing skills on both sides? How do you make those selections? You're learning those skills right now as an undergrad that you're going to use. So there's so many transferable skills that you learn during recruitment that's going to help you along professionally, whether you think so or not. Believe me, the first time you go on your first job interviews, you're going to hear some questions like, wow, those are things that we ask during like info meets. So you're going to be really prepared. I think in terms of Phi Sigma Pi, brotherhood type answer, I think for a lot of you, this organization has made a difference in your life so far, and it's really made a big impact. And recruitment is your opportunity to give that to somebody else. And so one of the best recruitment tips I've ever heard was, it was a member from another organization, and I'm a big fan of borrowing best practices, aka stealing ideas. And what they did was they would write down the letters. So, for instance, get a scrap piece of paper and write Phi Sigma Pi, the Greek letters on it. And go up to one of the recruits and the potential new members that you feel is going to be a great fit, and give them that piece of paper and tell them, right now that's just a piece of paper with some Greek letter words on there. You don't know what they mean yet, but I really hope that you're going to stick with us, and I'm going to get to teach you not only what they mean, but what they mean to me and what they're going to mean to you. And invite them to keep that little piece of paper in their pocket as they go. And I think that means so much to them. And after induction, you can say, I told you, 6 weeks ago, I wanted to teach you what this means, and even though you got inducted, now you know what they mean. We're going to continue to keep learning what those letters mean to us. So that's kind of like my touchy-feely tip I would give you. So just a quick few housekeeping notes for you to remember. One is sometimes if you're concerned about how members are going to communicate to others or how you get that teamwork going, just know there's a lot of leadership and action modules that you can request. So that's just on our website at bicentennialpi.org/request a module. Coming forward, there are a few more hangouts this semester. So we have one on officer transition with National Secretary Natalie that's going to be with y'all. And then Vice President of Finance Sarah is going to be leading a roundtable on fundraising. So if you need cash to fundraise and support your recruitment events, that's going to be a great one for you as well. So definitely check those two roundtables out. We talked about planning ahead and why it's so important to plan ahead. So I hope you guys are all planning ahead about the centennial that's coming up. It's going to be here soon, really soon. So feel free, if you're on Twitter, you can tell us about how you are celebrating the centennial using hashtag PSP100, especially if your chapter has centennial plans. Tweet us pictures. Don't forget to wear letters on the 14th of each month. And then we have our two national events coming up this summer. So Alumni Convention, which is like a big alumni reunion, will be in Seattle this summer, so we hope you can join us. And then National Convention, which will be formally celebrating our centennial in Kansas City. So we'll be going back. You'll get to visit Alpha, and registration is available on the website. So a lot of exciting things happen. So definitely plan ahead. Again, we'll keep the conversation on Twitter. An archive of this broadcast will be available on our YouTube page, so feel free to share it with anybody. And we look forward to seeing you on a future roundtable. Big thanks to our panelists tonight. They gave a lot of great advice. If you liked what they said, the greatest part about it is that they work for the fraternity to serve us, so you can email them, email your consultant, email me if you need to, and we're always happy to help. So have a great night, and I look forward to seeing ecstatically awesome numbers when we look at our chapter recruitment growth this year. Have a great night.
Woo, thank you. Everyone have a great night.
Happy recruiting.